All right, you're very welcome to the RT Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo. We're on RT.ie, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be previewing the Euro 2025 knockout stages later on with Shelbourne's Rachel Graham, as well as chatting about some of the results from the Women's Premier Division later on. But first, I'm joined by Richie Towell and Keith Treacy. How are you, lads?
Oh, good.
Good stuff. Now, we're going to talk about some of the transfers that have happened and that could be happening involving Irish players like Evan Ferguson to Roma and Aaron Connolly, who's joined Leyton Orient. But before that, let's talk about the League of Ireland sides in Europe. Obviously, we had live coverage last Wednesday of Shelbourne Champions League first qualifying round, first leg against Linfield. Mipo Adebeko scored the winner just before the hour mark. And I suppose, Richie, when we were speaking last week, a lot of the focus was on the fact that Shels have match sharpness and Linfield don't. And you were saying, Shelbourne need to start on the front foot, and they kind of did that. And now they weren't able to sustain it throughout the match, but they did put a lot of pressure on early on.
They started really quickly. I just would have loved them to be a little bit more clinical. Look, like when you start a game, well, it's all well and good, but you need to kind of punish the teams, and especially a Linfield side that you knew wasn't going to be physically able for the fast start, and then wasn't going to be able for the end of the game either, as because you could see the lads, they were out on their feet coming towards the 70, 80 minute mark. So I would have really liked Shelbourne to go for the juggler. Now they had some great chances during the game. I think Mipo's decision making was a big factor in them not going 2-0 up in the game. His decision making, he was shooting when he should have been passing it, and he was passing when he should have been shooting. So we spoke about him a lot early on in the season, and we thought that having a manager like Damien Duff and a coach like Joey O'Brien, we thought that his decision making would come on, but it doesn't seem to be. And I'd love to know if he's watching his games back and realising the little mistakes that he's making, that if he did pass it when he should be shooting and vice versa, it would bring his game to a new level, because he has all the attributes he does. For me as well, watching the game, I thought Harry Wood was absolutely fantastic, especially the first half. I was really surprised that Joey took him off, to be honest. And that probably goes to show where they were a little bit. I think they were actually happy with the 1-0 win. But as I well know in Europe, like a 1-0 win going away from home, it's not a great lead to have.
Yeah, we'll talk about the second leg, which obviously will be on Wednesday. But Keith, on the other side from Linfield, they obviously had the disadvantage of being out of season. They're sort of in pre-season at this point. And obviously they deal with a lot of Shelbourne chances as well. How do you feel they set up in terms of trying to stifle what Shels would bring to the table?
Well, I think they set up to have a little bit of a go early doors. It looked like they were going to try and press all over the pitch. But as Richie said, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, they got deeper and deeper and deeper. Poor old Jamie Mulgrew in the middle of the pitch, the 39-year-old. I was looking at him, and I was doing the game for News Talk, analysing the game, and I thought what Shelbourne need to do is make him look like a 39-year-old, get him moving from side to side. And after about 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, he started to look like a 39-year-old in there. And I'm sure the Linfield players will be saying to me, well, Chris Shields will be coming straight back in there anyway, so that'll become a little bit more solid. But I think once they got to the hour mark, Linfield really did start to struggle. And I think Joey O'Brien deserves a pat on the back, because I was watching the game and I was thinking, you need to get big Sean Boyd up just so Adebeko. Look, he has a lot of good attributes, but he can be quite raw and quite wasteful at times. But I think if you get Sean Boyd next to him, you've got him as the target man, and you just tell Adebeko to stay close to Boyd, because nobody's going to win a clean ball against him. And within probably 2 minutes of Sean Boyd coming off the bench, he bullies one of the Linfield players, just gives it to Adebeko. And again, it's a bit of a deflection, bit of a scruffy old shot, but it ended up in the back of the net. And look, I think Shelbourne will be thinking we should have won by more. Very similar to the Pats that I'm sure we'll move on to. They should have won by more. But going to Windsor Park now next week, you'll be thinking it could be somebody slips on their arse, somebody gives away a soft red card or a penalty, and all of a sudden you're up against it in a game that you were largely comfortable in for 80, 90 minutes, much the better team. So as Richie said, you will hope that next week it doesn't come back to think you've missed a whole host of chances. And when you smell blood in these games, you need to make it count. And 1-0 doesn't really feel like it reflects the full 90 minutes. And I'm sure Joey O'Brien will be saying that to his Shelbourne team. But in the back of my mind, as a Shelbourne player, if you're a Shelbourne player, you're thinking, we've had a look at them. They don't look great. We don't have a lot to fear. Not to go in complacent, but they're the better team. Man for man, on paper, Shelbourne are the better team. And it goes for St. Pat's as well. If St. Pat's and Shelbourne don't get out of these ties, they will only have themselves to blame.
Yeah, let's listen to Joey O'Brien. He was speaking to the panel, the RTE panel, just after the game last Wednesday, and then David Healy as well. He was speaking to Tony O'Donoghue, just looking ahead to the second leg at Windsor Park.
Will it frustrate you that it's only one because the performance was so good, particularly that first half?
Yeah, but listen here, as I said, it would have been all to play for next week as well if it had been two, And listen, I'm sure next week to go up there, it's going to be difficult. But we're looking forward to it already. I said to the lads up there, I hope you're buzzing for it already.
Yeah, the transition since Damien's departure to you taking over seems pretty seamless, Joey. That's what it appears to be on the outside. I presume that things have continued in a similar vein in training and everything else.
Yeah, no, listen, I think I said loads have changed, but not a lot has changed. You're still getting up every morning, you're still going to work, you're still on the training pitch. So a lot of stuff like that. Obviously, we are really well coached, well drilled before the manager left. But here it's just to continue on to that, and then a few tweaks here and there. But look, the one thing that'll never change is the intensity of training. Training has been great, and I think once your training is really intense and really competitive, it comes on to match night.
If there's any little frustration, we had one or two little moments that we didn't quite capitalise on with a finish or a better pass. But we'll be better next week, no doubt, with the ball. We'll have to come out of the traps a little bit faster. We'll have to go and put a little bit of pressure on. So we look forward to that. And again, coming into it, it's probably a little bit deceiving for me. I've seen Shels quite a bit where they are in the league table, and people are looking at saying Shels are down in 4th or 5th this year and whatever else. They've been well in so many games. They've probably been unfortunate not to win a few more points and win a few more games. So we knew the quality. The champions of Ireland last year, and rightly so. So pleased enough for the outcome, and so I'm overly delighted. Pleased with the effort that the players put in, and we'll give it a right go next week in Belfast.
Right, so that is Linfield manager David Healy, and before that it was Joey O'Brien who was speaking to the RT panel. So Richie, as you said, 1-0 in Europe can be a dangerous lead from your own experience. So how, if you're looking at it from Michelle's perspective, how should they manage this leg? Because again, it's very, sometimes you're going to far-flung places in Europe. This has a slightly more sort of derby feel, and Linfield are kind of talking about going on the front foot a little bit early doors.
Yeah, I think they should just go up there and fight fire with fire. Just go in as if it's 0-0 and really go for them. As I said, I wasn't too impressed with Linfield physically, how they even looked physically. I thought some of the players looked a bit overweight and stuff like that. So if I was Joey O'Brien, I'd be saying, lads, start the game exactly the way we did in Tolka Park. Go for them. Let's be realistic. You see Shamrock Rovers, they went up to Windsor Park. Everybody thought, it's going to be like that. Like as you said, Raf, a big derby field with a competitive game, and they went and trounced Larne, and it was simply because they didn't show them too much respect. They went up and stamped their own authority on the game, and that's exactly what Shelbourne need to do. If they go up there and sit off Linfield will move the ball, and they'll get bodies in the box, balls into the box, and they'll create chances. I've no doubt about that. So if I was Joey, I would say to the lads, exact same game plan as the home one. Let's go for them, because as Keith said, on paper, Shelbourne are the better team. They're better players, man for man. So go up there and prove it.
Yeah, and Keith, I suppose the final point on this game, do you start with Sean Boyd and sort of, I suppose, fight fire with fire early, or do you leave him to later on as a sort of game changer as he did in the first leg?
Personally, I would start him, Raf, just because I would assume that, as David Healy says, they're going to have a little bit more of a go, a little bit more of a tempo. And when you've got a big target man like Sean Boyd, if there's any sort of pressure or it gets a little bit too tight, it's an easy clip up to him, up to his chest, up to a fighting header. So yeah, I would start with Sean Boyd. I try and weather that early storm that you'd imagine is coming, and then go and take the game by the scruff of the neck there. And I would show that David Healy interview to the Shels players, because he basically said he's pleased to be only 1-0 down. And if that's the message that's in the Linfield dressing room, you've got to be really wary of that. And as I say, it's a mistake, a slip, anything like that, and they're back in the game. So for me, you start with your strongest team, and if Sean Boyd is fit and healthy, then Sean Boyd is in that starting 11 for me. And whether it's a 2 up front, or you tell Harry Wood to get close to him and drop back into a forward in midfield, wherever it is, Shels are the better team. So you don't have to get too bogged down with tactics here. You're a better team, as Richie says. Go out and prove it. I'm sure there will be a little bit of an onslaught. You'll have their backs against the wall at some point, but they're fitter, they're stronger, they're quicker. Move the ball. Tempo is your friend in this game. The ball goes out of play, get it up really quickly. Don't play like an away team, because tempo will hurt these, because they're in pre-season. So I'm sure Joey O'Brien will know all this. And as I say, I don't expect it to be particularly easy, Raf, but I expect Shelbourne to come through.
Yeah, and then in the Conference League, first qualifying round, Pat's obviously involved, and they beat Hegelmann at home. Aidan Keena's penalty on Thursday, 10 minutes from time. And similarly to the Shels game, Pats did start on the front foot. We'll talk about their inability to score goals from open play a little bit later on, but they did start on the front foot. They did have a lot of chances.
Look, they started on the front foot. They had a chance. I think it was young Mason Mealy had a chance within the first 2 minutes. He could have put away. And look, the more I watched the game, I looked and thought, these really don't have an awful lot. And they started to tire towards the end as well. And I realised that Hegelmann are bang in the middle of their season, but it didn't quite look like that. They did start to tire. I think they've got two half-decent players in Enjoy up front, the Cameroon centre-forward, and they've got Ribeiro, the Brazilian winger, who's quite decent. The only way that them two players can hurt you is in transition. If Pats lose the ball up high, maybe a big long raking pass, or Ribeiro can eat up the ground with his pace. But Raf, they're playing a team that basically have two good players in it, and they should be able to go and stand on the throat. I understand the second leg, in Stephen Kenny's words, is a small astro. I wouldn't be looking forward to that myself, but you've had a look at them. They struggle to keep the ball in the middle of the pitch. They make some really strange decisions at times, and they were lucky to get out of Pats with just the 1-0. So very, very similar to the Shelbourne field. I'm sure Stephen Kenny will be saying, lads, these aren't great. Whatever he's saying in the media about them not being bad and moving forward, they've got a little bit of money thrown behind them. They got promoted 4 years ago. They're new to all this. They have an average attendance of about 300. They've only got a stadium capacity of 1,500. So whatever version of this team Pats get, it's not going to be hostile. It's not going to be brilliant. So again, I expect Pats to come through. I don't expect it to be easy. They will have to solve some problems on the fly because they don't know an awful lot about this team. And after 90 minutes, it's not a foregone conclusion that these players are what they think they are. They could be some surprises out there. But for me, they've two half-decent players that you need to look after, and the rest are bang average. So, again, I don't think Stephen Kenny needs to overcomplicate it with tactics. Go and win the game of football, but play the conditions. If the Astro there is not great, do not play out from the back. Don't force your style of play if it's not going to be conducive to you. So, for me, don't make mistakes. Pat should easily win that game.
Yeah, but the Richie, in terms of the inability to score goals from open play, that was evident again, albeit they did have a fair few chances. The fact that the winning goal came via a penalty sort of underlines it a little bit. Like, from your perspective, where was it sort of going wrong in terms of the actual finishing in that game?
They've always been creating chances, Raf. That's never been the issue, especially with Stephen Kenny's teams and past way gone. But especially now, like St. Pat's are still creating numerous chances. And you think they have Mason Mealy, £2 million worth of player up front, and they have Aidan Keena, who arguably everybody probably thought he was going to finish as top goal scorer this season, and both of them, they just seem they can't hit the heights that everybody thought they were going to. Obviously, they have the likes of Jake Mulroney and Zach Elbazetti as well, that you'd really want them to be starting to have a little bit more of an input in games with goals and assists and stuff like that. Now, I know the two boys are creating chances, but it's not enough. You really need them to chip in and take the load off the likes of Mason. Mason's still a young boy, he is, so to take the load off him and not have that pressure put on him constantly, especially coming around in Europe, like let's be realistic, Pats would be hoping for some sort of financial gain from Europe, and to put that sort of weight on a 17-year-old's shoulders is really difficult, and it's unfair as well. Going over to Lithuania now, I'm after checking the weather and that over there. It's probably similar to the way it is today. It's probably going to be a little bit sunny, but I think they're having quite bad weather with like rain and stuff like that. So I don't think it's going to be a big issue for them. I remember when I was with Rovers and we were going over to the likes of Fair and Faroes or Pout or something, that's 26, 27 degrees when you're going out onto the pitch. So I don't think they're going to have that. As Keith said just previously, the Pats love playing out from the back. Maybe they might have to go away from that a little bit. As I said, a small astroturf, but I think we've seen over the last number of months that Pats don't really seem to change the way they play ever. And sometimes it's their downfall, it is. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they go over there and handle it, because, as I said, a 1-0 win in any European game is difficult. I think it's a little bit easier for Shelbourne going up to Northern Ireland, but for the likes of St. Pat's going into the unknown over in Lithuania, I think that's going to be a really difficult time for them.
Yeah, you mentioned transition, Keith, in terms of how Pats deal with that, and they were kind of indebted a little bit to Ryan McLaughlin, seemed to be getting into good positions and just making interceptions. But then there's the bit where Jake Mulroney dashes back after a corner, and Hegelmann really go at them, and then at the other end as well, Jamie Lennon makes a last ditch tackle as well. So there are moments there that they will have to watch out for.
Yeah, that's the only little thing that Hegelman produced on the night, and there were ifs and buts and maybes, and if something happens there, he could have possibly been in. The Jamie Lennon tackle was a brilliant one. It was looking as the ball comes out, you're thinking your man's going to get a half decent strike on from 18 yards here. Jamie Lennon, lovely block. The Brazilian winger Ribeiro had a bit of a chance that he fluffed as well. He trashed it across the box when he should have been a little bit more composed. But again, these are little moments where Pats are up the pitch, they've committed bodies, and then they've lost it, and it's just a big ball in behind, and they try and get something from there. So look, I don't know whether Pats just relax with the numbers. They try and keep the ball, but keep the ball in the right areas. Don't mess around with it in your back. You can get it into the final third, keep the ball up there, bring them onto you. The one thing for me on that Astro pitch, they'll probably train on it the night before. Get a feel for it, and if you're comfortable on it, no problem, play your style of play. But many Astros I've been on, and it just doesn't feel right. The ball doesn't bounce the same way. It checks differently when you're doing these big diags. So for me, first 15 minutes at a minimum, just clear your lines, play into the channels, get two men up front. If that is Aidan Keane and Mason Melia, get those two up front and tell them they're going to have to work their absolute socks off. Pats might give up a couple of chances in this game, Raf, but on the flip of a coin, Hegelmann didn't look capable of keeping Pats out. It could have easily been about 4 or 5-0, and that's been quite generous to Hegelmann. Could have easily been 5. If Mason had his shooting boots on, could have had a hat-trick. So I'm sure Stephen Kenny, as he always does, will be concentrating on saying Pats. And if Pats turn up and even give a 7 or 8 out of 10, they should easily have enough here. And barring a couple of silly mistakes or, as Richie says, blindly playing out from the back when they shouldn't be, I don't really see too many problems.
Yeah, and I think the Hegelman keeper handled outside the box at one point, but there's no
Yeah.
VAR in the Conference League as well, so there's nothing penalised there. But turn our attentions to the Premier Division. So obviously the sides that are involved in Europe weren't involved, but that meant the likes of Derry City had an opportunity to gain some ground. They didn't. They lost 2-0 away at Sligo Rovers. So Patrick McLean with a header, and then Wilson Waweru just before half time capitalising on an error. And I suppose Keith, looking at from the Sligo point of view first, they've made a good few signings, some of them on loan. Patrick McLean obviously gets the goal, experienced defender, and then you have Ryan O'Kane who's come in and James McManus on loan, and they were all starters against Derry City and all seem to have hit the ground running.
Yeah, I was talking to Jonathan Higgins yesterday, and Jonathan is a big Galway man, and he said,
Yeah, I know.
We're looking over our shoulders now. We're a little bit nervous that Sligo might be catching us. So I look at Sligo, and I looked at them all season. I thought they need a goal scorer. Our own Eldon comes to the front, but it's just individual mistakes defensively. They keep making these silly mistakes. But you look at the front four now, Raf, with Owen Elding on the right, Hakiki in like the number 10 position, Ryan O'Kane on the left, Waweru through the middle. They're the front four you can get behind. They're the front four that can give you goals. And as you say, with McLean coming in as a centre half, a goal scorer and centre half as well, those little pieces as a puzzles are starting to come together for John Russell, and I'm absolutely delighted on a personal level. I have a lot of time for John, and Sligo are a really solid team, been around the league for ages. So it'd be a shame to see them get relegated. I know they're not looking that far. It looks like they might get the playoff. I'm sure they have aspirations of going and catching Waterford, but yeah, the early signs are good with the new signings. I'm sure John Russell is thinking we can get enough points together here. And obviously, with Galway looking over the shoulder after losing Moses Dyer, they feel like they've just stalled, possibly even going backwards. And Sligo have that little bit of momentum now. So it'll be brilliant to see if it goes all the way, and it's going to be nip and tuck.
Yeah, and looking at it, Richie, they've won 3 of their last 7 games. Now, the clean sheets haven't been coming. I think there's only been 2 clean sheets in that run, but Shamrock Rovers is the only team who've scored twice against them in a game in that 7-game spell as well. But as Keith said, when you look at the table now, Cork City, who they play next, but not for a couple of weeks, are 8 points below them. And then actually closer to them are Galway and Waterford. Galway 6 ahead, Waterford 7 ahead. So within the next few weeks, the whole narrative could change, where it's about actually trying to gain survival like automatically.
100%, Raf. Especially like you see the last couple of games that Sligo have had. They've played first, second, and third. So they played Rovers, Derry and Bows, and they've come away with 5 points. I'm sure if you had asked John Russell before a couple of weeks ago, you're going to get into them 3 games, you're going to pick up 5 points, he would have snatched the arm off, you would have. So, as Keith said, you see the players that they're after getting in the door, the attacking threat that they have. If they can just keep the back door shut, I think they'll be fine, genuinely, because obviously I've watched them a couple of times this year, especially over the last few weeks, and they look really good, especially when they're attacking. And then on the flip side of that, I watched Galway on Friday, and then I've seen Cork as well. 2 really, really poor sides that are in bad spells. So, look, it'd be great for John Russell, because I like him. I do. I like him as a manager. I obviously played against him quite a lot as well. He was a really good player. I love the job that he's doing down there, because it's not easy, the job that he has on his hands. His best players always seem to get taken away from him and stuff like that. So, if they keep going the way they are, I think they'll be fine, genuinely.
Yeah, and Keith, from the Derry City point of view, the wind was in their sails going into this game, 4 wins in a row. They hadn't done that previously this season, and this was a huge opportunity to step down on the gas, try and close the gap on Shamrock Rovers, who aren't in action. And it's again, the doubts sort of circle back in. We've been giving them a lot of praise recently, but again, the narrative changes a little bit.
Yeah, it's typical, isn't it? As soon as people start thinking, "Oh, it's going to be Derry are going to be the ones," they fall flat. And a couple of weeks ago, it was Bows on a great run. It's going to be Bows, and then they fall flat. It's hard to get behind anybody, Raf. I really don't know what the problem is with Derry. You know, people are trying to convince me that they've got a great squad. They've got players that have come to the party over the last couple of weeks, but really, there's Michael Duffy there that's the big threat. I know Liam Boyce up front to start to score a few goals. Ronan Boyce, the right back, is chipping in with goals. They've got Gavin White as well, the Northern Irish international. They've got some really good players, but for one reason or another, I just don't fancy them to ever go and really challenge Rovers. There'll be times where they flirt with it if Rovers come off the boil when they're in Europe, but in terms of going beyond Shamrock Rovers or even matching them over the course of a season, I think they're a million miles off it, Raf. I really do. And to be fair, you could probably say the same about Bows, St. Pat's, everybody in the league at the minute. Just seems that, you know, they're at a level where everybody's beating everybody, but Shamrock Rovers, when the chips are down, beat whoever they need to beat. And yeah, it's horrible to be at this stage and thinking nobody's going to be able to catch them. But the inconsistency of Derry, the inconsistency of Bows, it's just too hard to be able to actually get behind them and think they'll be the one.
Yeah, Michael Duffy, in terms of the Derry City chances that were there against Sligo, he was sort of at the heart of any good moments they had. But Richie, interesting enough, just looking up front, there have been some changes. So they brought in a striker, Deepo Akinyemi from York City, but that's meant that Patrick Hooban has gone out the door now. He's gone to Glentoran. Like, what have you made of Hooban's time at Derry? It's obviously ran over a couple of seasons.
Yeah, listen, Pat is a natural goal scorer. You don't really get many of them, especially in this league that puts the ball in the net so consistently. If you have an asset like that, like Pat's has a proven track record of scoring goals in this league. He has done for the last number of years, and he just didn't seem to give him any time on the pitch to prove himself. It's always difficult when a new manager comes in, because you're always thinking, does he fancy me, does he not? And especially when you're a striker, you want that consistency in playing and getting chances created for you and building up partnerships with people. And Pat just never seemed to get that opportunity. So when I seen him moving on, I was a little bit surprised. I was, especially for a Derry City team who's potentially going to challenge Shamrock Rovers for a league title, to get rid of such a good goal scorer that's been around the league a long time. It is a bit surprising.
And Waterford beating Cork City 2-0. So obviously Cork are in a bit of deep water at the moment. And at the end of the game, there was a small pocket of Cork City fans who entered the pitch to just vent at some of their players at the end. And then there was the unfortunate timing. If you see the clip where Kaiser Chiefs says, "I predict a riot," started playing on the PA system. Now, there wasn't a riot. There was only a small number of fans there. Obviously, the frustration sort of boiled over. But I suppose, Keith, looking at the goals that Cork gave away, particularly the one early on, the one that Glenfield scored, it's a ball straight being played out from the back straight into midfield, and it gets intercepted, turned over, and then they're in trouble straight away. And there had been a warning sign before that as well.
Yeah, like I said, Raf, it wasn't like it was the forced ball into midfield and he got absolutely punished, and it was ruthless from a Waterford point of view. They were flirting with that for a good little while before it actually happened. And the ball into midfield, it's not there. Like, and when you're playing out from the back, you get these training sessions and the manager says, "Now, if this happens, I want you to do that." And the opposition that doing it are the reserves or the younger kids. And there's no intensity, there's no real press in it, because they're just there as sort of mannequins. And then you come into a game situation and you see that picture in your head and you think, well, I just pop it in there, and somebody gets after you with real intent, and you think, oh God, this is not what we practiced. And look, I don't know why they're playing those silly balls into midfield, especially when you're playing away to Cork and you're fighting for your life. Very rarely over my time watching football and playing football have I seen people play their way out of trouble. And I'm talking about relegation candidates. Very rarely do they play their way out of trouble. It's more, let's bite down on the gum shield and just get this done somehow. But Cork constantly got caught playing out from the back. The Glenfield goal, it's a lovely finish, but you think he wins the ball about 20 yards out from goal, and look, take nothing away from the finish, but if you've only got 20 yards before you can hit, before you're at the goal, you half the battle is done. You're not having to open up the opposition whatsoever. When you look at the Cork's team, Raf, Maguire, Dyke-Steele, Cahill, O'Sullivan, there's a lot of players there that you think Cork should be okay in this league. Couto is a big miss. Keating is a big miss. I'm not sure what Cork fans want, to be honest with you. I spoke to Tim Clancy at a dinner before the start of the season. Surely a new team coming up into the league, it should be survival. But you get this air of Cork having the notion in their head that they should be bang in the middle of a European race, if not top of the table. And you're like, well, where's that come from? You are a very big club. I understand that Cork are a massive club, but where's this, we should be here? There's building blocks have to be put in place. Very rarely does somebody go from Division 1 to European race to this. They have to put building blocks in place. And if Cork somehow manage to stay in the league this season, that's viewed as a success for me. So I think they need to align their thinking, the Cork fans, of what they expect to see on the pitch. But I understand watching their team getting caught play out from the back and make basic mistakes time after time can be infuriating. But I think Cork are exactly where people expect them to be, given they've only just been newly promoted.
Yeah, and Richie, just from a midfielder's perspective, just on those balls into midfield, where would you sort of lay the blame? Is it on the centre back popping the ball in, or is there a thing where maybe the midfielder just needs to be making a bit of space for himself, or just be on the half turn or whatever it is, or because obviously the defender is being instructed to play that way largely.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was going to get to. They're obviously being told to play that way. As Keith said, you can't play yourself out of a relegation battle. Like, I watched them against Shelbourne last week, and they made the exact same mistakes they did. They were 2-0 down after 6 minutes, and it was like that from trying to play out the back. If I'm Jerry Nash, I'm going back to basics. I'm saying, right, lads, what if they kept one clean sheet the whole season? And that was against St. Pat's, who can't buy a goal at the moment, so I wouldn't even look too much into that. So if I'm Jerry Nash, I'm like, right, lads, let's get back to basics. They have, as Keith said, they have players up the top end of the pitch who can play. Get the ball up to them. Don't be messing around at the back, playing in the midfield. Look, I know you have the likes of Greg Bulger there, he's been around the league a long time. He probably feels like he wants to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and show his leadership qualities. But if you don't have 10 other players around you buying into that, and everyone else is shying away from the ball, it's never going to work. It's not. So I think Cork really, really need to go back to basics and say, right, we're keeping a clean sheet. If the worst that comes out of it is we get a draw, we'll take that. And like as Keith said, that's a building block to move on. But at the moment, it just seems like every time they go onto the pitch, they're going to need to score 3 or 4 goals to win a game. And it's never going to happen. It's not. So for them, they need to go back to basics, keep a clean sheet and build on that.
Yeah, Steve McMullen, the Waterford keeper, had a good game as well. So the Cork City did have chances, but they're not keeping out at the other end, obviously. So Richie, like, if they, obviously there's an FAI Cup round first, but then the next game is against Sligo Rovers, who have the wind in their sails and are the team right above them. If Cork City lose that, it won't be mathematic, but for you, would they be down if they lose that game?
I think they're done already, Raf. I know that probably sounds a bit harsh, but like, you look at a Sligo and you can see parts of their game that, you know what, they'll be all right. Like they defend quite well, attacking going forward, and everybody seems to be singing from the same hymn sheet. But you look at Cork and they just look a bit all over the place like that. Centre halves are looking to play out. Midfielders are kind of shying away from the ball. They never look like they're going to keep a clean sheet. So genuinely, I think Cork are done. I can't see them unless there's some sort of miracle or something happens down there. They really need to change what they're doing, as I said, and start with a building block, keep a clean sheet, and then see if they can move on. Because, as Keith said, trying to play out from the back and play this attractive style of football. Look, I know the Cork City fans are very passionate they are, but their most successful period of football was when John Caulfield was there. and it was back to front. It was similar to the way Galway are playing, but they had better players than Galway do. It was back to front, and the Cork fans loved it. They did. So it's not like as if it's a Shamrock Rovers or a St. Pat's where the fans are demanding that attractive football playing out from the back. I think it's coming from Jerry Nash thinking, right, I'm a coach. I want to coach these lads and how to play the right way. And I'm all for that, but not right now. You come in, get the job done, keep themselves, and then you can build on that next season. You see in the Premier League, if anybody's struggling in years gone by, they get a Sean Dyche in, they get a Sam Allardyce in, that type of manager who shuts up shop at the back, something to build on, and that's where you take it from. But for them, that's what they need to go back to.
Yeah, and speaking of Galway United, they went to Bohs and lost 3-0. Douglas James Taylor scoring his first Bohs goal, and then James Clark with a brace. And Keith, looking at Douglas James Taylor's impact, obviously the first game he was involved in after his signing, he was a little bit quieter. This time he was very involved, and I suppose his goal was just brilliantly taken.
Yeah, his goal was brilliant. I think it was Greg Cunningham that dropped off, maybe makes a wrong decision, but you can't really take an awful lot away from the strike. Is brilliant, drops off the two centre halves, gets a turn on and just buries it into the back of the net from 22 yards out. It's really good finish, and every Bohs fan would have just had that little sigh of relief when that hit the back of the net, because you're always eager for your new striker to score a goal and get that momentum going. And he wasn't free scoring that Drogheda before he came into the building either, so I'm sure Alan Reynolds would have thought, thank God for that. And it was a good goal as well. It wasn't a scrappy one that goes off his heel or the back of his arse. It was a lovely goal. So he'll get that little bit of confidence from that as well. But we can sit here and talk about Douglas James Taylor, which his goal was brilliant, and his debut on Dalymount, brilliant. James Clark, for me, was the man of the match. He was absolutely brilliant. His second goal in particular was a real cracker when he cuts in on his right foot and just bends it into the top corner. He's a player I've really enjoyed watching over the last couple of months when he's playing in that false nine, dropping off, running in behind. His work rate from the front has been excellent. And the more I look at James Clark, the more I really start to like him. He's a really, really intelligent boy. To rob a Stephen Kennywood, he's quite diminutive in stature, but it doesn't seem to bother him. He puts himself about, rides tackles really well. And now Bohs only 8 points behind Shamrock Rovers with a game in hand. So we all go behind Bohs now, and when they lose, we'll all be disappointed. But look, seriously, it's been brilliant from Bohs. I remember having a chat with Alan Reynolds in Dalymount, and he was talking about maybe building a tunnel so he could get out safely. Now, he's going out on the crest of a wave. The fans absolutely love him. Everybody's behind them, and the football they're playing is brilliant. I love watching Bohemians at the minute.
Yeah, and Richie, I suppose even looking at Clark's, the first goal Clark scored, so when Bohs go 2-0 up, Douglas James Taylor, who signed it as a 9, he had drifted out of position. He wasn't involved necessarily in the build-up in terms of being on the ball, but it allowed a player like Clark, who has that kind of instinct of being just in and around the box, to thrive. And that's not even counting his second goal as well, which was, as Keith said, sort of like an individual goal, kind of a solo one.
Yeah, I was in Dalymount on Friday. And the two of them built up a really good partnership. The first half was really difficult for Bohemians, especially for the strikers. You could see every time they were in the build-up phase, the boys up front were trying to cover the sun out of their eyes. The sun was setting really low, it was, and they couldn't see it. And so I felt really sorry for Douglas James, especially on his debut, because you could see he wanted to get the ball into him and do his stuff. As soon as the second half turned around, you could see like that. You can see everything. You can see the picture. He turns and gets a lovely goal. But Clark was absolutely fantastic on the night. Between him and Dawson Devoy, the two of them were my man of the match. They were. Clark should have had a hat-trick, only that the Galway keeper made an unbelievable save. So he'll be absolutely delighted with his night's work. But for me, everything that Bohemians done well was through Dawson Devoy. Honestly, he was absolutely brilliant. He was. He was playing as the deeper one at the start, and he was really dictating the play and getting Bohemians into the final third. Every time they get into the final third in the first half, it just broke down. It did, and it was really. You could see Alan Reynolds and Stevie O'Donnell and Soylent, they were getting a bit frustrated because the build-up play was so good, and then they were just being so sloppy in the final third. I was actually saying, instead of him being as a 2 to flip a little bit, to go a bit higher for that creativity, they done that towards the latter of the first half. And I kept breaking down then in the building block. And I was like, so it actually, in the second half, it worked out perfectly because Devoy kind of done both he did. He was like that box-to-box old-school midfielder. And he really ran the show he did. And as I said, everything good that Bohemians done was through him. if he's to stay fit for the rest of the season, Bohemians have had a bit of a chance. As Keith said, they have a game in hand, and they're at that putting a little bit of pressure now with getting that win against Galway. So it'll be very interesting to see how it pans out over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then from a Galway United point of view, so John Caulfield was speaking to extratime.com, and he was just talking about the options they have at the moment. Obviously, as we said, their top scorer, Moses Dyer, is out the door. So he said, I suppose we are asking Malcolm Shaw to get up to speed. He hasn't played since November. He started last week. I've tried to push these guys. Obviously, young Aaron Bolger came in for 70 minutes. It was great for us. It's a difficult time of year when some of your players go and you're bringing in players who haven't played since May. Axel Peasold came on and did okay, but to be fair to Malcolm, if he was here since January with a full pre-season in him, I have no doubt that he would have a number of goals. He will score goals. I've no doubt about it. And Richie, I suppose looking at Malcolm Shaw since he's come in, he has been kind of lively and quite busy, just hasn't put it in the back of the net at this point. But for Galway, they do need to get kick-started one way or another, as we've mentioned from the context of Sligo, only 6 points behind, and it can be very easy to sort of drift, and then someone can come up the rails, sort of in behind.
Of course, I was actually really disappointed with them on Friday against Bows. Normally, you can see a team straight away what way they're going to play, whether they're going to go into that low block and defend their box, or whether they're going to press high and have a go. They were kind of caught in no man's land, whether some of them were pressing, some of them were sitting off. And it was like they kind of didn't know what they were doing. And that's uncharacteristic from a John Caulfield team. Normally they're well drilled, they all know what they're doing. But as you said, Malcolm Shaw, he's only in the door. So there was times where he was pressing the centre halves and those were just playing straight through them, and they were at the Galway back 40 where, so a little bit frustrating, I'd imagine, for John Caulfield in that sense. On the flip side of that, Malcolm Shaw had the absolute graveyard shift he did. I think it was probably 26, 27 degrees even at 8 o'clock in the evening, and he had that lone striker role where you could see him, he was trying his best, he was trying to press the centre halves, and it just wasn't quite working for him. And there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, Raf. You obviously have someone like Moses Dyer who was there. He was a big fan favourite. He was scoring goals, and not just scoring goals, he was scoring brilliant goals. He was scoring headers, left foot, right foot, volleys. So he was kind of the real talisman. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how Galway go from here, because on evidence of Friday night, and then you're looking at Sligo, I think Sligo could catch them if Galway don't get a definitive style of play, and obviously they need Malcolm Shaw to hit the ground running as well.
Yeah, and it's all about trying to stay away from the first division, where the results were UCD 3, Finn Harps 1, Treaty United 2, Cove Ramblers 1, Bray Wanderers in the big game beat Dundalk 2-0, and then Wexford and Athlone 0-0 draw, and then Saturday night Longford Town beat Kerry 3-1. And in terms of the Bray game, so Max Murphy with a penalty, and then Kinsella Bishop laid on. And looking at it, Richie, just from the highlights, Dundalk had a lot of chances throughout the game, particularly before they gave away the penalty and then at the start of the second half, but Bray are obviously made of tough stuff this season, and they made the most of the moments they did have.
Yeah, of course, and no doubt. You see, Bray last season, Bray were really good. They were very, very unlucky not to go up. I actually went out to watch them against UCD in the bowl in the playoff game, and they were excellent. They were. Now you see, obviously they go up against the Dundalk team, who was littered with talent, the likes of Darrell Horgan and players like this. So I'm sure they were under no illusion it was going to be really, really difficult this season to get top spot again. But you see them, they're really pushing them. I thought at one stage Dundalk was going to pull away, but you can see it now. It's getting really, really tight in the first division, and it makes for a more entertaining league. You don't want one team to just go down and walk, and then everybody else is playing for the playoff spot, because it's really difficult to go up through the playoff spot in the first division. I actually think it's really unfair what they have to go through. So yeah, look at Bray. They're doing really well this season, so they just need to really capitalise on last week and have that confidence and rebuild them.
Yeah, and Cove Ramblers, they failed to capitalise on Dundalk slip up, so they're 4 points behind, but they've had some major developments off the pitch. They've parted with FC 32 Global Investments, who they've been affiliated with for less than a year. And today, and earlier on, just before we started the podcast, they confirmed that another investor group from the US, Digital Athlete Ventures, have taken a 90% stake in the club. Now, we're going into an FAI Cup weekend, so the second round of action. Now, we're going to have live TV coverage of the third round, so not this particular round of action, but the the next one that comes. But Keith, looking at it, I think there's only one, in terms of the fixture, the most intriguing fixtures. I think we said it a few weeks ago. It'd be Dundalk versus Sligo on the Friday night. But at the time, Dundalk were in brilliant form. Sligo were struggling, and it looked like they would be passing ships in the night towards the end of this season. However, everything's flipped on its head. So it's a very different fixture from the one we thought it was going to be when the draw was made.
Yeah, but I still think the messages in both dressing rooms would be the same, although the level of intensity that the both teams were at was probably dropped ever so slightly. Dundalk will want to have a look at Sligo and think, well, they're the Premier League team that are fighting for their lives. Can we have a measure of what we're all about against them? And Sligo will want to feel the same, that these are the first division team. Are we going to feel, superior against them? And yeah, I think that's probably the tide around. Everybody be looking at that one. And Dundalk and Sligo, it's a tighter game. A lot of minds will think, Sligo are in the top division. Sligo should win that. Dundalk is always a very, very difficult place to go for anybody. So, yeah, that could go either way, that one, Raf. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Dundalk come out on top there.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. We'll obviously react to that and all the main storylines that come out of the FAI Cup second round next week. But let's talk transfers before we go. So Aaron Connolly signed for Leyton Orient last Monday, and Mark O'Mahony has gone to Reading FC on loan as well, and he will be managed by the former Ireland striker Noel Hunt. Mark Travers is also being linked with Everton, where he would presumably be going as number 2 to Jordan Pickford, the England number 1. But just in terms of Connolly, Richie, you know him from your time at Brighton, but in recent times, anyway, he's had a lot of false starts in terms of short-term spells in different places at Hull, Sunderland, and Millwall. And this is a drop down to League One, which, on the face of it, for a player who maybe people thought would have been sort of like a nailed-on Premier League player when he first burst onto the scene, it feels like a come down. However, maybe it's a good opportunity and a good place, maybe for him to, as a platform to try and just sort of rebuild his career.
Yeah, I'd love him to rebuild his career there. Obviously, you said he is after having that step down, but sometimes that can be a good thing, Raf. You take one step backwards to go 2 steps forwards. He was kind of bouncing around clubs and not really getting the game time that he would have wanted and moving on, and the same thing happening again. It'd be great if he went to Leyton Orient, nailed down a starting spot, and just banged in a load of goals. Because I actually know the manager, Richie Wellens, there. He actually came up through the Manchester United Academy, and he's a brilliant manager. He is not just tactically, he's a brilliant man manager as well. I'm sure that he'll be able to get the best out of Aaron Connolly, and especially the way his teams play. He was my Salford manager, and he's like that. He's a real progressive manager. He wants to play out from the back, go through the lines, get it into the striker's feet, and create loads of chances. So I'm sure it's a match made in heaven. Potentially, just need to make sure that Aaron Connolly is fully focused and he's tuned into what Richie wants from him, because as I said, I played with him before, and he can be a bit harsh as well. If things aren't going right, he'll be the first one to let you know. So look, I hope Aaron really does, because as we said, he was someone that burst onto the scene, and we all thought he was going to be a Premier League player for a long period of time. He obviously has had his troubles with alcohol and stuff like that. He's been very vocal about that. Something that's incredible for him to have the courage to come out and speak about it. Hopefully that can impact some other young footballers to realise that that's not the route to go down. So I'd love if he could hit the ground running there, because a player that I know and a manager that I know, you like to see them all do well.
Yeah, in terms of Aaron Connolly, as you mentioned, he's been quite vocal about some of the issues off the pitch that's affected him, and I think he's been kind of vocal enough. He knows the sort of the perceptions that are out there about his character or what he's like as a person, which usually perceptions have nothing to do with what a person's really like. You know him a little bit. What is he actually like as a character, or at least back then when he was at Brighton, when he was a bit younger and coming through?
Yeah, coming through, it's crazy, like, and it's actually a little bit upsetting. It is, because I never knew that he had that problem. I was obviously a little bit older than him, and for me, when I look back at it now, you think I would have loved him to have been a little bit more aware of what was going on, so you can try and help them. You can. That's why for me now, when I was at Shamrock Rovers, I always tried to help the younger lads, because you see things that happened previously, and you think, oh, I could have done a little bit better there, and it's disappointing, and sometimes it does upset you. It does. I know you're there to do a job as a footballer, but you're a human being at the end of the day. And if somebody's really struggling, to go and put an arm around them and to try and help them, it's very, very important as well, because we're not just footballers at the end of the day. We're role models for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, and Leyton Orient seems like a good club, so hopefully it sort of works out for them. They've been upwardly mobile, very unlucky not to go up through the playoffs to the championship. So best of luck to him there, and obviously 9 Ireland caps, and there's always a future with the boys in green as well if he can hit the ground running and get his career back on track. But Evan Ferguson looks like there's been strong rumours, Keith, in terms of him going to AS Roma, which would be a huge move. Obviously, it would be on loan, potentially with an option to buy, is what is being discussed. But what is interesting is Roma are in a very interesting spot now. They have a new manager in terms of Gian Piero Gasparini, who everybody will know from his time at Atalanta, led them to Europa League glory. They were in the Champions League every other year. And it's, I suppose, Italy as well. It's a league where strikers do thrive, but defending is also not a dirty word. So there's a lot to learn there for Evan if he was to make it to a club like Roma, which is obviously a huge one.
Yeah, look, if Evan does end up going on loan to Rome, it would be a sensational move for him. It's a melting pot of pressure over there. It's not exactly, we speak about players going away from England and going away from the limelight. This is not going away from the limelight. This is staying straight into the fire. This one, the manager, as you mentioned there, Raf Gasparini, is the sort of manager that, if he was managing Belvedere up in Fairview, I'd want to go up and play for him. He's just that type of manager. He gets you on side. He reminds me a little bit of Trapattoni. He just has a little bit of an aura about him, and you want to run through brick walls from him. And having a look at what the Atalanta team did from him, he's obviously a very, very good tactician and an extremely, extremely good man motivator. He generally plays a 3-4-2-1 or a 4-2-3-1. So there's only going to be one out-and-out striker. You can't really see Evan playing off the left or playing off the right. He wants to be through the middle. They've got a Ukrainian boy there, Artem Dovbak, who's a decent player. So it's not like Evan goes there and he plays and everything's going to be rosy in the garden. It's going to be really difficult for him to break into that team. The likes of Pablo Dybala, El Shaarawy, Pellegrini, the Italian international. There's some really, really high standard of attacking players there. Evan's only 20 years of age, so if he goes to Roma and doesn't play a lot of games and comes back, it wouldn't be the end of the world, Raf. But he's only played 8 Premier League games for West Ham last year. He didn't score any goals. And from an Irish point of view, I look at him and think, we need you. We need you fit and firing for this World Cup campaign and these World Cup qualifiers coming pretty soon. That's from a selfish standpoint. From an individual standpoint for Evan, it'd be brilliant for him to go to Roma, to get that experience, play under a brilliant manager. But you don't want to go there and play a handful of games and not score goals. I've been around, I've played for a lot of clubs, but one thing I've never done in my career is walk into a dressing room with no Irish, no English, no Scottish and no Welsh lads. That must be an extremely difficult thing to do. And at 20 years of age, that would have gobbled me up. I wouldn't have survived in a dressing room that doesn't predominantly speak English and has no, English, Irish, Scottish or Welsh lads around for me to bounce off. So look, it would be a learning curve for Evan. I'm not sure how many 20-year-olds could take that sort of stuff in their stride, but Evan seems to me like he could do it. But for me, if a Leeds came in from him, if somebody in the Championship come in from him, it wouldn't bother me in the slightest to say, yeah, Rome is there, but I'm going to go to Leeds and play 30 games this season. I think that's more important for him. But I understand that if I was Evan Ferguson and my agent rang me and said, Gasparini fancies you and Roma want you, I'd be on the plane, I'd be gone. I understand the allure of that, but just try and take yourself out of that and say, what's best for me as an individual now? And I think game time is the most important for Evan. Although, Raf, I understand he's only 20. So even if he does go, and I don't want to use the word waste another 12 months, but even if he goes there and doesn't play a lot, it wouldn't be the end of the world for Evan. He would still only be 21.
Yeah, and I suppose Roma, there probably will be game time there because they are in the Europa League as well. So they would, I don't know that Dobbik would be starting every single game in every competition. But then there's the example of Tammy Abraham, who went from the Premier League, seemed to settle in really well at Roma, and then went on to AC Milan, I think, on loan as well. So there is a pathway there for it to work if you sort of, I suppose, if you decide to adapt to, I suppose, the cultural side and everything else as well.
Yeah, of course. I think, you get in and you'll start learning these personalities as you go in the dressing room, who comes up to you, who chats to you, who's trying to make you feel welcome. And you attach yourself to certain people that will embed you into the dressing room. And look, I'm sure there's some good personalities. Like Dybala is a World Cup winner. Surely you go up to him and, you see what his English is like, if he's going to be nice. And there'll be players there that have been there and done it before. And as Richie says, as you get a little bit older within dressing rooms, you start to see these younger lads and you think, I'm going to try and give a little bit back here because I've tripped myself up so many times. If I can avoid a pitfall for him, all the better. So yeah, I'm sure that Roma dressing room will all try their best to get him on side if he does go there. But it has to be a very intimidating thing, Raf, to be going to a country that doesn't predominantly speak English. I'm sure a lot of the lads do speak English, but even Gasparini, I'm sure his team talks are in Italian, and that must be a very difficult thing to get your head around. I've obviously had a taste of it with Giovanni Trapattoni, and his broken English would come in out of English and Italian, and Robbie would sort of impersonate with Liam Brady. You would get the gist of it. But it must be a very, very daunting thing for a 20-year-old to try and weigh up.
Yeah, and something you mentioned, I think last week, Richie, which was in certain clubs in certain countries, the fans have such a huge say, like the ultras in Italy. I mean, I think that's where the term ultra sort of comes from as well. Like they have a massive, massive say. And I think from the bits I know about Rome and Roman football, like Roma, they probably haven't achieved as much as they should have as a club in terms of trophies, but like they have like different radio stations dedicated to just speaking about Roma, and that's a level of pressure that Evan wouldn't have been used to at Brighton, which granted, has been doing well in the Premier League, but is not as anywhere near as big a club.
Oh, it's absolutely wild, honestly. For a 20-year-old striker to go there, I think it can go one way or the other. If Evan goes there, hits the ground running, scores a couple of goals in his first game, in his first few games, he's going to be a hero over there. The fans will love him. And as a striker, your confidence, if you think about it, if your fans are singing your name and you're a striker, you're going to be going out onto the pitch full of confidence, and it could be an amazing thing for Evan. On the flip side of that, it's very, very daunting, as Keith said, to go to a foreign country, speaking a foreign language with players that you don't know. You don't know if many of them are even speaking English. How friendly is it going to be? Where's he going to live? What sort of food do they eat for a pre-match meal? Everything is going to be completely different. As you said, Raf, he's gone from a club at Brighton and Hove Albion, who are a real family-orientated club. There wasn't that pressure on him there. It's not like you even think with Premier League standards, you have the likes of a Newcastle, like a Leeds United, even in the Championship, and teams like this that have that passionate fan base. Brighton's fans weren't like that. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful. The Brighton fans are incredible. Like I remember some games that you'd get beaten and the fans would cheer you off the pitch, they would, because they were probably more interested in a day out with the family and everybody having a good time and the sun shining on beside the seaside and that. If you're going over to Roma and it's do or die, it's a completely different kettle of fish. But as I said, if he can go there and hit the ground running, it'll be great for him. If he does make the move, it probably tells you a little bit about his personality as well. Let's be realistic. Everybody knows that footballers have egos, but it's different having an ego and having the courage then to go and be like, you know what, I can go to Roma and I can be a success. So it'll tell you a little bit about him as well. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how it plans out.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes if it does happen as well. Obviously, if it does happen, I think the indications are it will be a loan with options of buy. I suppose before we go, I didn't mention Mark Travers, Keith, who looks like potentially he would be going to Everton, but that would be presumably going in as a number 2. And given the fluctuations, obviously Caoimhin Kelleher now as a number 1 at Brentford, so consequently he's going to be the number 1 for Ireland. Gavin Bazunu is just at a club like a relegated Southampton, so it would have been interesting maybe if Travers was at a club where he would be guaranteed game time. So what do you make of that move if it does happen? Because again, like Evan Ferguson, this is not a confirmed transfer.
Yeah, look, it's on paper it looks like a great move, Travers to Everton. You think, oh, that's brilliant, what a move, but in all, he's probably going to be the number 2, Raf. I don't really see him coming in and challenging Jordan Pickford. He's currently the English number 1, and I know the Everton fans think really highly of him. I think he has a mistake in him every now and then. I think he gets a little bit bored and has to get involved in the game, but largely for England and Everton, largely he has been very good. So, yeah, I don't see Mark Travers playing a whole host of games. He might be restricted to FA Cup games, and it's hard to get too excited about it. Personally, it's a good move for him. Just he's going to a brilliant club and a brilliant manager. But from Irish eyes, we can all sit here and hope Jordan Pickford maybe pulls a hamstring and Mark Travers gets into the goal. But he's been so reliable and so robust for so long that it's hard to see Mark playing too much time. But yeah, a decent move, but hard to get too excited about, Raf, when basically your instincts are telling you he's not going to have a lot of time.
Yeah, now we're going to be talking Euro 2025 with Rach Graham. So Keith and Richie, thanks very much for your time.
Cheers, Raf.
All right, delighted to be joined now by Shelbourne's Rachel Graham. I suppose commiserations first on the weekend result, which we'll talk about later. But I suppose how are things?
All good, Raf. Yeah, other than a probably poor weekend result wise, but look, all good in the end.
Yeah, we'll start on Euro 2025. Obviously, it's ongoing now. The group stage is over. The knockout stages begin on Wednesday. But looking back, first eight nations have fallen by the wayside. So, who disappointed you the most from those that have been eliminated so far?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's any been, huge kind of shocks in terms of the teams that have gone out and the teams that have gone through. But I think if you're looking at disappointments, maybe would you look at the Netherlands, just with the name that they bring, the weight that their name brings, and obviously against Wales they were good, but Wales, as we've seen, were not the greatest of opposition against England. Then they just really didn't even put up a fight against England, and then left it very late against a really tough French team. And look, they were actually really good in the first half, so that kind of showed that they are good, they can play well, and then it just kind of almost crumbled them the second half. And I just think for them and the players they have, the level that they're playing at, and to concede 9 goals against England and France was just really, really disappointing. So probably not so much disappointing that they didn't come out of the group given how tough it was, but I just think with the performance that they put in, I think they'll be really disappointed with themselves. And then look, if you're probably looking at terms of quality, maybe, the likes of Iceland, and look, to be fair, they're probably done as best as they could, but I think it's disappointing to see, the level they're at and they're qualifying for Euros, and we again haven't got there. It's just like an extra probably disappointment rather on our end, when you're looking at them and the population they have, and we should be there really. And possibly the only other team really, maybe Denmark, probably didn't really perform too well either. And then losing to Poland, who are new into the tournament and probably actually impressed, given how new they were. But I think in terms of Denmark, I mean, they reached the semi-final in 2013, 2017 to knock it out of the group. I think, there's probably a bit of a gap now, really pulling away from the likes of Spain, England, France are really kind of pulling away from everyone else.
Yeah, and then last time we spoke about Belgium, it was they'd been beaten at that stage by Italy 1-0, and it was just before they kicked off against Spain, which ended up being quite an entertaining match. But then they went on to beat Portugal 2-1. They've been eliminated as well, but obviously from our point of view, it's all about October when the Republic of Ireland played them in the Nations League playoff. So based on the larger sample size of the two following games, where do you feel Ireland are at in comparison to Belgium, who showed a little bit more than in the first game?
Yeah, look, obviously the first game was disappointing for them, and when we were watching it, we were kind of thinking, we're not miles off this. We can even beat them. And then look, against Spain, it's obviously a big task for them, and they're not going to set up against us how they set up against Spain. I mean, you're obviously just going to do your best to keep Spain out. And look, they did get 2 goals against Spain, and they're obviously a big threat from set pieces. Val Howard is, I think she's 6'1". Like, I don't think we've anyone. With the retirement of Louise Quinn, I don't think there's anyone who's going to probably really challenge her in the air. So that's going to be something that's really difficult for us. And then we seen them against Portugal then, and they were much better shown than what they had shown in the first 2 games. And it's probably when I was watching thinking, God, we do have a tough game against us now in October coming up. So I think they looked good when they were breaking away kind of on a counter attack. So that's somewhere we've probably looked a bit vulnerable in our last recent few games. So definitely an area where we need to kind of tidy up on, and especially now our back four is kind of chopped and changed a bit, and we still don't have an out and out right back, which could be proved to be an issue again in October. So look, I think they've definitely shown better qualities in the last 2 games, and I think now going into October, like they've them 3 good competitive games under their belt, even gelling together as a team. They've probably spent the last probably 3 or 4 weeks together, and really getting to know each other, training probably near enough every day. So probably going into the game better prepared than we will be. So yeah, look, it's nothing that I don't think we can't overcome, or we need a miracle to beat them, but it's definitely going to be a difficult game.
Yeah, and then looking ahead to the quarterfinals now, so they kick off on Wednesday. So every game, of course, on RT2 and the RT player. And the first one is Norway against Italy, so 8 o'clock kick off, and then the coverage will be from 7:30. And Norway, they obviously they won all their games, but they haven't been convincing. And then Italy have been kind of quietly impressive in their own way as well. So this one is kind of intriguing. Like, any team could really come out of this one.
Yeah, I think exactly that. And if you probably just look at the results and how the games have gone, you'd probably tip Norway because they've won their 3 games, and Italy have only won 1 game. But I just think Norway haven't been the most convincing of wins. Probably really underperformed. I wouldn't say lucky to get a group, but they should have really kind of won all those games handy enough, and they didn't. I think Italy have shown good defensive qualities. It's going to be a really tough game for them. It's their first knockout game stage since 2013, so kind of a new territory for them. And Norway have a history of probably underperforming in games, so it's kind of the momentum is maybe with Norway, they're off the back of 3 wins, but I just think Italy are probably flying high in confidence and getting out of the group first of all, and how they've performed in their games. I mean, putting it up to Spain is a big achievement, really. So, look, I think both teams have scored in all their games so far, so hopefully it's a scoring game, and I think it could be a case of maybe Italy showing how to defend and maybe catching them on a counter attack. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really tough one to call, that one.
Yeah, and then on the same side of the draw, Sweden against England on Thursday. So that's again another 8 o'clock kickoff. And I think the last time we spoke, England had only played the one game, so the one they'd lost to France, which there seemed to be a lot of soul searching off the back of it from an English media point of view, particularly. But they've bounced back absolutely brilliantly then, particularly the Dutch game, but also then last night against Wales.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where you put it. They've bounced back brilliantly, and but look, Sweden are a tough ask. They've won their 3 games. They beat Germany 4-1 recently, and look, okay, Germany were down to 10 players for majority of the game, but it's still a really good win. They look really dangerous. Look, I think they're maybe third or fourth place in Europe, like overall in the ranking, so they're not up there for no reason either. And England, yeah, poor in their opening game, but look, in their last 2, they've proven what quality they do have, scoring a lot of goals. With Sweden on the other side have only conceded 1, so they're kind of set up really well defensively, and there's some really good players. I think Canarid looks really good down that right hand side. She's causing teams a lot of trouble. She's creating chances for Sweden. And look, the flip side, England have Lauren James, who's probably doing the same for them. So I think it's going to be a really tight one. I think the last couple of games they played have been draws. They played each other in the semi-final of the last Euros, which England won 4-0, which is, I would say, is probably still in the back of the minds of the Swedish players. And, there's still probably a bit of hurt left from that because, I mean, that's a big defeat. So I think it's going to be a really tough game for both teams. I'd say England are probably maybe the favourites going in, but I don't think it's definitely not going to be a 4-0 game. I think it'll be one goal that decides it.
And the way Sweden dismantled Germany, obviously there was a red card in that game as well, which obviously was a factor, but they were so impressive in that. How much would you read into it going into the England game then for them?
Yeah, look, I think you would read into it. I think Germany are a top team, so if they're beating them, scoring 4 goals against them, you need to read into it. It's not luck. I think they look really good when they're counter-attacking. They're really fast going forward, and England do. Lucy Bronze will go forward, so that could be space where they might look to get in behind. Um, Greenwood is playing left back, who's more naturally a centre half. That could be somewhere they target as well. So yeah, look, I definitely would read into it. I know it was the 10 players, but still to get 4 goals against Germany is definitely something you'd be worried about if you're playing them next.
Yeah, and then Friday, Spain against Switzerland again, another 8 o'clock kickoff, and Switzerland getting through with a late equaliser against Finland in their group, and obviously that's going to be great for their fans. Probably, given who they're coming up against, that's probably the end of the journey. But given they're the host nation, they've got to a knockout stage. Is that a success for them?
I think so. Yeah, I think getting out of the group was brilliant for them, and look, they're probably never going to go and win the whole tournament. So I think to get this really good tie for them against Spanish, who are probably the best in the world, it's probably brilliant for them, to get the chance to play against and maybe get a really good crowd into the game. So I think it's obviously a daunting task playing against Spain, but it's, you want to play a big game, you want to play a big nation at some stage. So I think, look, their previous meetings are not going to be to be too, hopeful for Switzerland. They've 5-1, 5-0 and 7-1. It's the last 3 games against each other, and obviously in Spain's favour. So I just think Spain, they've won games comfortably. They've scored so many goals, buckets of goals. So I think for Switzerland, it's going to be a case of just trying to keep the score down as best they can. But look, Spain have shown some weaknesses. They do commit, their back line very high and leave space in behind. So possibly you might catch them out, or even set pieces, you might catch them out. But I think it will take, something from the gods coming down if Switzerland want to beat Spain with the form that they're in.
Yeah, you mentioned Spain's vulnerability at the back. Obviously, when they're at their best, they press and suffocate teams. But is it a case of just when you're going up against them, just try and hit balls into the channels, given how many players they're kind of committing forwards?
Yeah, look, I think that's probably our best game plan against them, is to, when they're attacking against you and they've committed all these players, can you get fast players up front that you can just basically put a ball in behind? It's not the prettiest way to play, but if it's effective, it works. So yeah, put it in behind, get them torn, get them running towards their own goal, and try and get on the end of something. it's probably that in set pieces what you're looking for. But look, the quality that you have, it's very much easier said than done, and keeping them out. And look, if you are going to beat them, I think you'll have to score at least 2 goals. So I just think for Switzerland, I think it's going to be too much of an ask. But maybe against the likes of France, if they both of them get to the semi-final, you could see a much tighter game.
Yeah, and with that in mind, you still have Spain as clear favourites for the tournament. Obviously, they're on the slightly tougher side of the draw in that if they could get France, I think if they got Germany, they would probably be favourites in that one. But is Spain still the standout favourite from what you've seen?
I think so, but I think the more I see France, it's probably going to be a really good game. And look, I'm going to assume the two of them are going to go through and get to the semi-final. And I think that's probably the one that's going to, it's always probably nearly going to be the final. Whoever wins that will probably go on and win it. But I just think France, with the pace that they have and the space that Spain leaving behind, if France can get in, and look, when they do get in, they punish you, they take their chances. They don't need 5 or 6 chances to score. So I think for them, I think that's going to be the best game of the tournament. I was hoping it would be the final, but it's obviously not going to go that way. But look, I think Spain, they're definitely still up there. But I think France are up there with them. And if not second, they're a very close second.
Yeah, and France obviously would have to get past Germany on Saturday in the last of the quarterfinals. But for you, Germany obviously major powerhouse, as we said, they've kind of fallen off that platform that they were on in comparison to all the other European nations. But they're even probably weaker than what was anticipated from the looks of their group performances.
Yeah, they've probably been the most underwhelming team, I would say. Look, they've got out of the group, they've got through it, and obviously had, bad luck at the start. They lost their captain very early on, and now for this game, they're going to have their second choice right back on as well due to suspension. So, they haven't had the best of luck, but even still, they haven't, wowed anyone like the other teams have. And, a couple of good wins, got out of the group, but, nothing that you'd be thinking that they're going to go and challenge Spain, challenge France. So, yeah, probably the most underwhelming team I would say so far. And then to play against France, who have been one of the best teams, I just think I don't really see past France not beating them, to be honest.
Yeah, and then we'll see how that goes. But anyway, all the matches on RT2 and the RT Player quarterfinals, and obviously then the following week the semis, and the 27th of July then the final. But let's turn our attentions to the Women's Premier Division. So Waterford just got their third win of the season, beating Cork City 3-1. Your own Shelbourne side lost 3-1 at home to Bows. Galway United beat Sligo Rovers 4-2. Athlone still top of the table and extend the gap at the top to 4 points now. 2-0 winners over Wexford, and then Shamrock Rovers in the TV game on TG Cahir beat Treaty United 2-1 away from home in the Markets Field. And DLR Waves, who have struggled at the bottom end of the season, are off the bottom right now because they've beaten Peamount 2-1 on Sunday. So I suppose just on your own game in terms of taking on Bowes, so it was the first league win for Bowes over Shelbourne, and obviously wasn't the most ideal start, I suppose, with the error.
Yeah, look, I think, first of all, we were, much the worst team of the day. I'm not taking anything away from Bows. They were much better than us. And we just weren't at the levels that we could play at. And they were just, everywhere. They were probably beating us to every second ball, every loose ball. So look, they fully deserved to win. But I just think for us, the manner of the goals that we conceded was probably the most disappointing thing of the day. I think the first one, like you said, it's just, it's basically a goalkeeper error. Like if she just clears the first time, it's not a goal. So I think that kind of maybe set the tone then for the day. And look, we were definitely second best, but look, it's the same as a win. You kind of think about it, you dwell about it for the weekend, but we've trained tonight. It's focused now on Peamount to put it behind you. The league is definitely not over. We're no way thinking that. I think it was obviously a really heavy, tough defeat for us to take, but that's just because of the levels that we set for ourselves and the standards that, we're not going to accept the way we played. And it's just about coming back now to play against Peamount on Saturday, which is obviously a must win now for us.
Yeah, you'd had some very intriguing games against Bowes already this season in the All Ireland Cup, and then previously in the league as well. But did they do anything different in terms of tactically compared to those other games?
Not really, to be honest. And look, I know we spoke about that league game that we beat them in previously, but in the first half of that game, they were the better team as well, and we were very lucky to go in. I think we were 4-1 up going in, but we were actually lucky not to be 3-1 down, if we were being totally honest with ourselves. So that was a bit of a mad one. Look, I think there's obviously a Dublin Derby rivalry there. It's tough. There's a lot of ex-Shels players on the Bows team, so it's obviously not personal, but it's kind of like, point to prove kind of thing. And look, to be fair, they've done it. So I just think against, you see them probably having results against other teams and they haven't played as well or gone as well. But I just think there's probably an extra bit of motivation. Look for both teams as well. But yeah, no, definitely on Saturday they were a better team, got their game plan right, and I just think they had probably more passion, more hunger, if we're being really honest about it, yeah.
Yeah, and Katie McCarron as well, who played brilliantly as well. Both quite similar type of goals in terms of the areas she cut in, but maybe the first one that she scored was probably the one that stands out the most.
Yeah, she just looking to kind of ball it behind and then she cuts in onto her right foot and puts it basically top corner. And look, we've seen Katie do that for us in training when she was with us. We knew what she's capable of. She just was probably a bit young at the time she was with us and probably didn't get a whole lot of game time. And when she was leaving, it was just basically that, look, you need to go, you need to get developed, you need to play more minutes. And that's exactly what she's done. She's proven herself time and time again for both. So she was a loss for us at the time, but I think it was obviously a good move for him. We didn't try and discourage her from going because we knew it was what was best for her. So, yeah, she's scored a couple of good goals now that have kind of done the rounds on social media. So, look, obviously it's a killer and it's tough to take, but it's nice to see her do well and she scores against other teams, maybe not us.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, obviously the title race is far from over at Lone of a 4 point gap, and they did beat Wexford 2-0 with Emma Mooney scoring a brace. But the thing is, it's in both of your hands in the sense of you still have the two games to play. So 23rd of August, I think you're going to Athlone to play away. But then there's the wild card of the game that would have been played a few weeks ago. Is there a sense of when that's going to be rescheduled for?
I think we've been kind of told to provisionally kind of called off on the 6th of August, the Wednesday, which is kind of, I think it's after their Champions League game. So that's the date we've been told. I don't think it's been fully confirmed yet, but it's looking like it's going to be a midweek game now. So, like, coming away from Saturday was obviously tough, but I kind of just thinking to myself, oh, the long games now are two must wins, but they were probably always going to be two must win games. So not a whole lot has changed. We just obviously can't slip up in any other games because, in fairness to Athlone, they don't looking to be dropping any points. They're winning, and I think probably the best thing about them is they're not conceding goals. Like they're getting 1-0, 2-0 wins, whereas when we win, we might get more goals scored than them, but we're also conceding. So look, that's obviously why they're top of the table and we're not at the moment.
And what do you feel the European, and obviously it'll be one game, and then if they get past Cardiff City, then it'll be a second game. But do you feel that would have an impact in any way, just from your own experiences of playing in Europe and then trying to get back to the rhythm of domestic football?
Yeah, it does have a big impact. And look, I think they have a great chance of beating Cardiff first of all. So that's another game for them to play. I don't really know a whole lot about the Croatian team, to be honest. So if they do win that, then it's going further again. And look, it takes away your focus. It's their first time there as well. So there's the excitement element of it as well. The fact that they're playing at home as well is big. They're going to have a lot of friends and family there. So it does, it switches your focus completely. And then come back and play league games so soon after, it is really hard because look, you're probably pretty much looking forward to this moment since you've won the league last year. So it's a big build up and then, to play in it. And I think they're going to go well. I think they're going to beat Cardiff and then they have a great chance against that Croatian team as
Yeah.
well. So, if they go far, it's definitely takes its toll. But yeah, look, it's where you want to be. It's the tolls that you want to have on you. So look, they'll be looking forward to it, but it definitely does take away a bit of your focus from the league, yeah.
And obviously you'll be cheering them on to go as far in Europe as well in
Definitely.
terms of an
That's
impact.
the
But
final.
yeah, but Shamrock Rovers 2-1 winners against Reedy United. So as I said, that was the live game on TG Cahir, and it was one that I was kind of intrigued to see because of the quality on both sides. We talked about some of those players. Obviously, Anya O'Gorman doesn't need much introduction from a Rovers point of view, or Jamie Thompson, or Joy Ralph, and then Bella Fekini, Madison McGain, Katie Lawley, and so it was an intriguing match. It could have gone either way. It was 1-1 and locked at that point, but then Scarlett Heron was sort of the player who tipped the scales with two headers, sort of made a difference in this game.
Yeah, and look, Rovers have obviously kind of lost two big players for them recently. They lost Katie Keane, their first choice keeper, and then Rusha Littlejohn, who's obviously, we know who she is, big international player. So that's two tough losses for them, really quickly together as well. So I don't think they have the biggest of squads. I don't think they have the most experienced of squads. They do have a lot of young players, and even young Ella Kelly, I think she's only 16 years old, and she's another bright one for the future as well. She played in the game, and yeah, look, it's a good game. Two good headers from Scarlett Heron. Sometimes you need your centre halves to bail you out every now and again. But yeah, no, Treaty, it's a tough place to go away, and Rovers, given the losses that they've had in the last couple of weeks in terms of players and some results probably haven't been what they would have wanted. It's a great win for them, especially to go ahead, equalise, and then come back as well is always a nice feeling.
Yeah, and then Waterford as well, the 3-1 win over Cork City, and obviously they're the newest team to the league. But also when you look at the table and what it does, the fact that they've leapfrogged Cork City, who are an established club within the league, that's an even bigger achievement for Waterford.
Yeah, I think, and look, we spoke about them at the start of the year where they're going to have really tough periods going through the league, and I think they'd lost their last four games, and then it's about kind of identifying which games that you can pick up points in, and they're probably looking at this game saying, this is an opportunity for us, and to go 1-0 down then and not lose hope and come back and beat Cork 3-1. It's brilliant for them. They're going to have plenty of tough days, tough results, but I think for the likes of these kind of games, it's great from they're such a young squad. I'd imagine it's hard sometimes, not having really experienced players who've been there and done it before. They're all learning, they're all new. So look, it's a great result for them. They're doing well so far, probably doing better than most people would have thought going into the league. So look, it's great for us in the league. We want teams to be strong. We want teams to be able to beat each other. So look, it's obviously a bad result for Cork as well. They're not going to be happy with that, with such a big, footballing city to be doing so poorly in the league. I'm sure they're not happy with. But I think for Waterford, it's a great start so far to their first year in the league.
Yeah, and then Galway United conceded from two corners early on, but then came roaring back to win 4-2 against Sligo Rovers. So to continue their own decent form in the league. And then the big one on Sunday was DLR Waves, who have struggled at the bottom of the table, and then beaten Peamount and then off the bottom now. So a really good day for them.
Yeah, and that's probably maybe the most surprising result of the weekend. DLR obviously really struggled this year. The results haven't been great. And then Peamount's, who would have been probably one of the teams you would have thought maybe challenging for the league this year, who have struggled in some games. And then, to DLR, I'm sure they would have expected to win that game. They probably should have won that game. So I think it just shows now in the league that you can't just go into games expecting to win them, or that you just have to show up. And Peas had a bad result against Sligo, similar kind of thing. So I don't know if it's a bit of a pattern creeping into their performances, but yeah, look, got lucky enough, I think, with a penalty. DLR. It was a handball in the box, it probably maybe a bit harsh. And then, a deflected free kick was the second one. So, you could look at it both ways. They didn't score from open play as well. But, off the back of result now, we're playing them now the weekend. So we're both off the back of a bad result. So there's probably going to be two reactions from both teams. So look, we'd expect a really tough game on Saturday, like we always do against them.
Yeah, even for the you mentioned the penalty there, because I think the first time I looked at it, I didn't realize what the penalty was given for, and then I kind of I went back and rewinded a little bit, and then I saw it like it just hit Karen Duggan's hand, but it's literally from point blank range. I know it's the letter of the law, but as you said, it is a little bit harsh. Like I don't think she can move her hand out of the way in the space of a millisecond.
Yeah, and I thought the same. I heard the whistle blow and I didn't know what it was for, and I had to watch it back once or twice to see what it was. So yeah, look, it's obviously really harsh. I think it's really harsh when you don't mean the handball, or you don't really get an advantage from the handball. It's always harsh to give it, but I suppose the way it is now, once it kind of hits your arm, or if it's not in a natural position, it's given as a penalty, and it's a tough one to take, I suppose, for Karen.
Yeah, and then the DLR Waves point of view as well, because I was reading a piece by Paul Fennessy, an excellent piece with Laura Heffernan, the DLR Waves manager, and coincidentally, then the following day, then of course they go and beat Peamount, but this was in the 42. But she'd made some interesting points, and the whole thing. I'd certainly recommend people to read it. But she says it's a labour of love, and this is about the coaching side of it, and that's whether you're a coach or a player. And I see the girls, we do three pitch sessions a week. We have our game at the weekend. They're doing their extra 1-to-1s or gym sessions on the alternate days. They're getting up at 6-7 o'clock in the morning to go to college, leaving college to come straight to training, and home late and up early in the next morning. That's 10 months of the year, and they're giving up their Saturdays to travel all over the country, and they get practically nothing to do it. So you have to wonder how much more we can push all these players and how much more we can ask from them, when on top of that they're probably trying to fit in part-time jobs just to make ends meet. And so we have to seriously start asking the questions of how much more we can professionalize the game and keep pushing these players if we don't have anything to offer them. And when we're analysing results, and obviously you're part of it in terms of like you're playing in the league, and so the sacrifices that you're making and your teammates are making, I suppose it is a reminder of just how much of a sacrifice this all is.
Yeah, and look, that's always kind of been the word that's used. It's like it's such a sacrifice, but I always felt like, I don't feel like it's a sacrifice, because I love playing so much and you get to get all these experiences. But look, without being sounding big headed, but I've kind of played at the top. I've got the experience playing Champions League, Cup finals, but there is players that don't get to experience that and still make the same kind of sacrifice that everyone else does. And look, I don't think there's any player or coach that I know of anyway that's full time. It's their full time job. So it's the reality for, nearly everyone in the league. And I've done it myself. I've done college. I've done full time work. And to be honest, I think the college one was actually the hardest one to manage. Because chances are, look, if you're playing the League of Ireland, you're in college, you're on a scholarship at that college, and there's times where you're training probably every day of the week with your between your college and your club, and there was days where I was playing college matches and then getting in the car straight away, going up and training, and then there's probably travel involved in that as well, and it is really tough, especially for college people, because they're on a scholarship, and I always feel like people used to tell you, oh, you need to manage your load, and you can't give 100% to everyone, but no one doesn't want to be at 100%. Like, everyone wants you to, take a bit of time off with the other place you're training or playing. So that was always really tough, because no one wants to be the one where you sacrifice the time. And I think, we've then players who are working full time and leaving the house, like Laura said, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and going to work and then going straight to train and not getting home to 9 o'clock at night. So it is really tough. Like, it takes a lot of, management. You have to probably have your food planned for the day, and getting all your rest and recovery in can be tough sometimes. But I think that's, the likes of myself, Pearl, the kind of older girls at Shels, we put a big emphasis on creating a really good environment, a really enjoyable environment, because like you said, if you're doing that and you're coming and you're not enjoying training, or it's not enjoyable, like it's hard enough to do when it is really enjoyable and it's fun and it's, you love being there. So on the flip side, if you're coming and training's unenjoyable, the atmosphere is not nice, it's very hard to maintain that. So that's why we put a big emphasis on that, because what players are going through, what they're sacrificing, the amount of time that they give to be there. So I think, like Laura said, 3 nights a week, I just think at the moment that's the max anyone could train if it's not full time. I think, like, if kids are in school, college, working, and then if you're adding 4 or 5 nights in, it's too much. So I think at the moment, I think 3 nights is the max, and I think until it goes fully professional, that's the way it will be. So I don't really see it going fully professional anytime too soon. So look, it's just about managing your time. We all kind of do it, but like she said, it's a labor of love. And when you say sacrifices, sometimes you have to remember that, you are sacrificing for something that's really good as well, and you do get great memories and meet great people along the way as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to talk transfers as well. So Chloe Mustaki, who was involved with Ireland during the recent games in the United States, left Bristol City, but has joined Nottingham Forest, and then Grace Maloney, who's signed for Sunderland. And just in terms of the Forest transfer for Mustaki as well, the Northern Ireland defender Cara Hamilton was part of the RT panel over the weekend for the Euro 2025 games, and she was just speaking about the sense of a club that's very upwardly mobile and going places. So it seems like a very nice landing spot for Chloe Mustaki in WSL2, with a sense of a progressive sort of club that is going forwards.
Yeah, I think the comments that she made were really positive, and she seemed to know about Chloe as a person. So that kind of shows you that they don't just sign anybody based on their ability. It has to be about the person as well, which I think is big. And look, they're a newly promoted club. They've just recently come up into WSL2, so it will be a challenge for them. But I think for Chloe, she's struggled with injuries since she's gone over to England, and I just think for her now, this is kind of like a fresh start almost, and just keep herself injury free, get as many minutes as she can, keep herself in the Ireland squad. Because it's really hard when your seasons are stop starting and you're picking up injuries. It can become really disheartening. So I think for her, it seems to be a bit kind of behind her, and she's injury free at the moment, playing for Ireland. I think she's 290 minutes near enough against USA. So if you can last 90 against them, I'm sure you can last 90 against many teams. But Chloe's always been, like, even when she was with us, like, just so professional. Her attitude, every training session was just, max effort, 100%. She got everything she could out of everything. And even when she done her ACL, she came back almost fitter and stronger. She came back in much better shape than before she had done it. So look, attitude is definitely never a question with Chloe. She's probably the best attitude that I've ever played with. So hopefully for her now, it's staying injury free, getting good minutes, and we see her then back in the Ireland team as well.
Yeah, and then a final thing that actually caught my eye, Olivia Smith joining Arsenal for Liverpool, and is the first £1 million player. I think we spoke about Naomi Girma and the US international who went to Chelsea, and that's over €1 million. But obviously there's a slight difference between the pound and the euro in terms of value at the moment. But it just goes to show there is, there's, I suppose, growing investment in the game, and also just growing, the finances are starting to get that a little bit bigger as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the first, like you said, first £1 million player, and it's obviously a big moment in women's football to show that, the money is starting to come here. It's starting to get more eyes on it. It's getting bigger and bigger. And I think what's great about it is, well, it's not, a really kind of big name, well-known player. She's only I think she's 20 years old, soon to be 21. So it's not like you're signing, like a Mateus or a Bonmati. It's a young player who's gone for £1 million, which is huge. And I think if you watch her play, she's got loads of quality. I mean, the pace that she runs at players, how she beats players with ease, it's a great signing for Arsenal. And look, obviously off the back of winning the Champions League, which is amazing, but I think for them, it's what they want is that league title. It's what's eluded them the last number of years. I think 2018, 2019 was the last time they won a league. So they're probably sick of seeing Chelsea lift it, and this is obviously a big statement towards that. And look, the other side of it is, that's a lot of pressure on a young player as well to be worth £1 million and a club investing so heavily in you. So, you have to deal with that side of it as well. And she's obviously tough competition. They've Caitlin Ford, they've Beth Mead, who are two probably world-class players. So be interested to see how much game time she gets. She scored 7 goals for Liverpool, which is a lot for a winger, I suppose, in such a short enough season. So look, that could be an extra 3-6 points for Arsenal, which could be the difference of winning or losing the league. So I think, look, from the clips that I've seen of her and when I've watched her play, she's definitely, a really exciting player. I think she'll do really well with the move. So yeah, great moment for women's football, £1 million. I just, probably growing up, you never would have thought you would have seen that. And the fact that it's such a young player, it's more of an investment I think speaks even more of it.
Yeah, and there's obviously a sense it's going to keep happening more and more now, given like the Girma deal and then Smith now as well. But that is it for this week. We'll be back next Monday to look back on the European second legs for Shelbourne and St. Pat's, review the FAI Cup action as well, and we'll also be in the final furlong of Euro 2025. So thanks to Richie and Keith earlier, and Rachel, cheers again, and we'll chat soon.
No problem, Raf. See you soon.